I've been keeping my fingers crossed since June the 1st. I mean, we're not even really into June, and we're already seeing, we already had one kind of little fender bender, as I like to call them, in May. And we've got a little system out there that could potentially develop into something later this week. Mm-hmm. Last year, in the middle of a pandemic, we head into summer and we have all of these storms, and then things move later into the year and flooding. And, people, I know it can be cost prohibitive for some, but people really need to consider priorities.
No question.
When it comes to flood insurance.
No question. We are the most benefited state in America by the National Flood Insurance Program. Since 1978, we've collected $19.8 billion in flood losses. And to make the difference between having flood insurance, which only 25% of our state's residences are insured for flood, and not having it, here in the Lafayette area and Baton Rouge areas in 2016, when only 12% of the people, the residences in those two metropolitan areas, had flood insurance, the average flood-insured property collected $95,000 on their claim for their flood damage. Those without got FEMA help, $9,000. And what they always provide, any president, they call it the Air Force One effect. After a catastrophe, they fly down, they tour the devastation, and they promise to be there to help rebuild. And they do. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. They do. But for the individual, what they offer is a SBA loan, refinancing your house, paying the cost of repairing it and putting it back in its condition before the flooding event. But what that does is it sucks all the equity out of your biggest asset, your home. So, yes, you get your house put back together, you get a loan that'll take you 30 years to pay off, but you no longer have $100,000, for example, in equity because your mortgage now is up to the appraised value of your property. So this is the best insurance by any property owner anywhere in our state can make, and yet we only have under 25%. Now, since 2016, the Baton Rouge area and the Lafayette, four-parish area in both cases, are up to 22, 23% compared to 12 and 13% before that bitter experience with the catastrophic flooding of 2016. So we now more than ever, because the NFIP, FEMA, it's not really insurance, it's called insurance. It's administered by contract by FEMA with agents and adjusters and companies to do all the paperwork and the processing of it. But the risk is at the federal government level, at FEMA. And they're redoing the way they price their policies. It's called Risk Rating 2.0. It was first proposed under the Trump administration, and they pulled it back before going forward with it. It's now set to implement in the fall of this year for renewal policies and spring of next year for new policies. You, if you are in a high-risk area, can get grandfathered with your status in the program by buying before that goes into effect.
People do it, please.
Please do it. Absolutely, Bernadette. So we've collected $19.8 billion. The next most benefited state, Texas, is $16.5 or $6 billion. And that doubled when Harvey went through Houston a couple years ago. We, before that, were more than twice the next most benefited state in pure dollars by the National Flood Insurance Program. So that's number one. If, as we go into hurricane season, access that still federally subsidized, it's priced below the actuarial cost. That's why they're doing this new rating model. Get that. Number two, get with your agent. Know what your coverage is and what it's not.
Understand it.
No question.
Yeah.
Every time we have a major hurricane event, the first call that we get is, I didn't know I have this named storm or hurricane deductible. 2 to 5%, not of your damage, it's of the insured value of your home. Typically $200,000. About a third of the homeowners' policies have a 5% named storm deductible. That's $10,000 out of pocket for hurricane or named storm damage before your coverage kicks in. And people aren't aware of it. They were common before Katrina and Rita, but not known. And they became known then, and they spread. All the coastal states, Gulf coastal states, Atlantic coastal states, now have named storm, hurricane, or wind and hail deductibles. And people still, even though the legislature in special session after Katrina and Rita required the companies to put a separate line in larger print on your deck page, the cover page, saying you do have such a deductible, and here's the percentage, and they do the math for you and tell you what it's going to be if you are damaged by such a storm. But folks don't pay it. I mean, they're busy. And this insurance stuff is complicated.
It sure is.
It really is. And it's so important. So important. Back to flood for one more minute. You can't wait till the hurricane's headed our way, because there's a 30-day delay between when you pay your first premium and the coverage goes into effect. So you have to do it now before it's too late.
And so going back to kind of the 2.0, any idea how much things might go up as of the spring of next year?
I'm fearful of what happened with the last long-term reauthorization 6 years ago. It was called Biggert Waters. 1,000-page bill, covered everything about flood insurance, and reauthorized it as we were advocating for, Democrats and Republicans, all coastal states, Texas through Florida and up to New Jersey and New York after Superstorm Sandy. We were all together, and we got the reauthorization in a compromise with the fiscal hawks. And they wanted the program put on, and the bill called for it to be put on a 5-year glide path to actuarial rates. We didn't realize, those of us supporting the program, including then Senator Mary Landrieu and Congressman Steve Scalise, our entire delegation, Democrats and Republicans, Texas Democrats and Republicans, everyone exposed to flooding events like we are, was supportive. When we found out what the glide path called for, it resulted in thousands of properties in our state being rendered
virtually non-coverable.
Worthless, because to get a mortgage on such property, you have to have flood insurance, a federally backed mortgage, which 95% of them are. You have to have flood insurance, and it was unaffordable to get flood insurance under that proposal. To my surprise, I was president of the NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners, that year, and then President Obama asked me to come to a meeting with him in the White House to extend for 1 year unqualified health insurance policies that were about to be declared not valid to avoid the penalty that came with the Affordable Care Act. I went and met with him, brought my Connecticut and North Carolina colleagues with me. We spoke about that, and then I took out of my pocket a letter from GNO Inc., which put together a coalition of realtors, bankers, mayors, legislators, congresspeople from Maine to Miami and around to Mexico, advocating for a rollback of Biggert Waters. And he had spoken publicly about not wanting to do that, wanting to keep the glide path to actuarial rates in place. Ultimately, he signed the bill that rolled it back. And frankly, I was surprised, and I give the credit to GNO Inc. because they truly put a great coalition of police jury leadership and mayors and all of the public officials of Louisiana and many other coastal states to get that rollback. And it wasn't free. The cap they put in place in lieu of 5-year hard drop actuarial rates was 18% per year on residential property and 25% per year on commercial. And that's been in place for 5 years now. The negotiations over reauthorization today, generally, and there are bipartisan bills, our two senators each have partnered with some Democrat. Menendez of New Jersey is one, and I forget the other Democrat. But those bills come with proposed caps of 9 to 10% per year, much more affordable. But back to your homeowner's coverage, know what your named storm and deductible is so that you know what your risk of out-of-pocket expense is.
Read that flood policy. Look for the first page and keep going.
Absolutely. And that's the homeowner's policy. And also know what your replacement cost is, what your insured value is, because construction costs have gone through the
They're
roof
huge.
in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
Lumber cost is up 200% and 300% over what it was 6 months ago. So that I saw a story the other night on the news. The cost of a new house, on average, nationwide, is $36,000 higher than it was a year ago, just from lumber cost increase.
And that should make people go, yep. That's why you have to know about the contents coverage.
Absolutely.
You got to know about, the things that you'll have to replace within the walls.
Correct.
And many of us, thank you, God, have not had to experience this, but that's why we need to pay attention before something potentially occurs.
Last year, 5 named storms hit our state. 5 in one hurricane season, all-time record. I think it's probably the all-time record for any state. Mm-hmm. Although Florida in 2004, I know
they
had
4
exactly.
Storms, yeah.
But we had 3 major hurricanes. 2 of them hitting the Lake Charles area on almost the exact same point on the coast and up through Lake Charles. Devastating effect. $9.5 billion in insured losses, $8.4 billion or so for the Lake Charles, for Laura and Delta shortly thereafter, and $750 million in the New Orleans area for Zeta in late October. So you mentioned, I in my own mind, I X off the weeks. We're 1 week down, 25 weeks to go in the ongoing hurricane season. But that's the price we pay to live in paradise.
Absolutely. And we do live in this paradise, and now we are into this summer weather pattern. And these thunderstorms, as they roll in, sometimes can
flood too.
Yes, 2016, and then just a couple of weeks ago, what we experienced here. If at least look into it, even if you are fearful that costs are high, please consider looking at cutting something else maybe out of your budget
talk to your
accommodate it.
Talk to your agent, even if the maps say you're not in a high-risk flood zone or whatever. Please.
Yes.
And if you're not in a high-risk area, it's inexpensive. Mm-hmm. It's $50 to $60 a month, and it's the best insurance by any property owner anywhere in our state can make.
What about the flood maps in terms of next year? Does that change also?
It does.
Will people move from one zone to another?
It's not going to be, they haven't revealed the details on how they're going to do it yet, but it's not going to be driven by elevation and levees, certified levees, not certified levees, et cetera. It's going to be risk assessment on an individual property-to-property basis rather than a zone basis. Right now, you can be higher within a zone that has a lower general elevation, and you can have a survey done to document that you're higher than your neighborhood and get a reduction if the survey documents the fact that you are a lesser risk than your surrounding area. I'm not sure how that will work under the new 2.0 proposal that's going to be unveiled here later this summer, to go into effect in the fall. But it is going to be, they acknowledge that it will come with significant rate increases for the highest risk properties. So again, speaking to the need, even if you don't have a mortgage and you don't have flood insurance because it's expensive, you need to get it now while it's underpriced and get that grandfathered status beforehand.
Indeed, this is something you need to do for yourself and for your family and the future of your family.
Let me wrap up with this.
Yes, sir.
If we are ordered to evacuate, do so. Protect yourself and your family members before you worry about your property. Get out of harm's way. But when you do, walk through your house with your cell phone and tape all of your assets, your flat screen TV, your furnishing, etc. Huge advantage in doing a claim if you suffer a catastrophic flood or tree through the roof that totals your property and the contents within. It's a big advantage. Number 2, when you leave, take your policy or a copy of it with you and the contact information for your agent or your company if you buy directly to get the claim process started sooner rather than later. The sooner you get your claim filed, the sooner you'll get an adjuster. The sooner you get an adjuster, the sooner you'll be able to get a reputable, creditable
licensed, bonded
contractor.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Be
Absolutely.
folks that
All
can
of the
rebuild
above.
for you.
And lastly, we're at 800-259-5300. Everything I've talked about this morning, they can repeat for you and put some more meat on the bone if you need more detailed information. And our website, LDI, Louisiana Department of Insurance, .la.gov, 800-259-5300. We're there to help.
Insurance Commissioner Jim Donelon, good to see you. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for explaining for folks exactly what is to come and the importance of especially doing it now.
Thank you,
before things
Bernadette.
change.
And John, I appreciate the opportunity to deliver this message to your listeners.
It is coming up now on 7:55 on Acadiana's Morning News.